Basketball Podcast. I am Gary Parrish, Matt Norlander joining me, and the coaching carousel, it stopped spinning for no NCAA tournament. Just because the games are resuming tonight doesn't mean the coaching carousel has paused. In fact, we'll have an introductory press conference a little later on today. Louisville has hired Pat Kelsey to be its next basketball coach. Norlander, I guess I'll just keep it pretty open-ended. Are you surprised that Louisville ended up hiring Charleston's basketball coach?
Well, that is how about big picture? Let's rewind, and I'll give you a little bit of the backstory of how this all came to be, but let's just talk in this space real quick on it. Let's go back 2.5 weeks ago. Not even 2.5 months ago, but 2.5 weeks ago, even before Kenny Payne was technically fired, when that was inevitability. I would have been surprised. Yes, I would. Would you not have been surprised over the idea that Louisville would be hiring a sitting mid-major coach that wasn't named Dusty May?
Yeah, of course. How about this? Pat Kelsey might be great at Louisville. I have no idea. If he's not, it won't be because he didn't put energy and effort into it. It won't be because he didn't understand what type of job he was getting. It'll just be because sometimes these things don't work out. But he might. We'll see. I will say that Louisville in my lifetime has never hired a coach with this type of resume or a coach with this little fanfare. And so that to me is the most interesting thing about this, that Louisville has hired a coach that clearly wasn't a priority and that comes with very little fanfare. Just to run you through it, like in my lifetime, and I don't have hair, so I've been around for a minute, but when Denny Crum announced he was retiring, Louisville dreamed of Rick Pitino, perhaps even before Denny Crum retired, and then they went out and landed Rick Pitino. And then when Rick Pitino was pushed out because of scandal, and Louisville had to hire a new coach, it prioritized Chris Mack, a Big East championship coach, a guy who had coached in 8 of the 9 previous NCAA tournaments and just secured a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. They prioritized him and they landed him, no problem. And then when they pushed Chris Mack out or agreed to accept his resignation, whether it was smart or not, that's debatable. In fact, it seems like it wasn't so smart with the benefit of hindsight. But they prioritized Kenny Payne, and he was brought to that campus with a ton of fanfare. And wherever it goes from here, we'll see. But I do think it's interesting. For the first time in my lifetime, Louisville has had to shop on a different aisle than it ever thought it was going to shop on to find its next basketball coach.
Listen, the gaslighting of our audience can't continue like this. You act like you weren't born when Denny Crum came over from UCLA when he was hired. That was also notable, though. I mean, he was John Wooden's assistant.
I looked, and I was not born when Denny Crum was named the Louisville coach.
If you say so. But you know what? Even Denny Crum, though, was that right next to John Wooden, who's, the second greatest coach in UCLA history to Mick Cronin. Like, even that one was a big one, big one. And so I will say this. Pat Kelsey does own a very impressive win percentage. Now, he's done it at Winthrop and he's done it at Charleston, but he's won 68% of its games, and he ranks in the top 20 among active coaches win percentage in the entire sport with at least 10 years of experience there. And so you got that. You've got energy. I think after the process that Louisville went through behind the scenes, Kelsey was as accomplished of a coach as Louisville could have gotten. And I do think he's got a healthy chance of working. But yes, Louisville went after Scott Drew. He decided he was fine staying at Baylor, obviously. It went after Dusty May. I expected to get Dusty May. Dusty May, swerved and went right up there to Ann Arbor to Michigan, which sent Louisville scrambling. And they looked at another, half dozen candidates. And then the weird part about all this is, and I reported it in real time on Wednesday, but, Josh Schertz at Indiana State had been a target for Louisville for a while, and his team is still playing. And there was still very powerful people around Louisville that were trying to get Josh Schertz to agree to a deal with the Cardinals into early Wednesday afternoon. And it fell through. It was clear Kelsey was the guy. And now we're going to have a press conference shortly, and Kelsey's going to be the one moving forward. He's got the capability, I think, to make this work. the big question with him will be the big question with Dusty May and so many of these other coaches. Okay, now you're taking this job in this new environment. I've been told Louisville has easily north of $2 million in NIL resources to flip a roster, but you're going to have to flip it. It's very competitive. Even as we do this show, there are a number of notable names that are hitting the portal, including, I don't know if these guys will have any interest in going to Louisville, but Boopy Miller from Wake Forest and AJ Storr from Wisconsin, and down on the list, Adu Thiero from Kentucky is in the portal. So known guys are now getting in there, and Kelsey's going to have to hustle quickly to not just build a program, but literally build a roster, because I think that making the tournament year one is the minimum here for acceptability for Louisville fans. Yeah, an 18-win season, Parrish, would be fine. It'd be nice, but it won't be a success. You go to Louisville after what they've had. It won't be. I'm not saying it will be easy. I'm just telling you, the fan base, after all this process, waiting, who's it going to be? You get Kelsey. They are going to expect tournament appearance year one.
To me, just the most notable thing about it, just to put a button on it, again, is that in 2018, Louisville conducted a coaching search. It prioritized Chris Mack and went out and landed a guy who was working in the same league as Jay Wright, who had just won the same league that Jay Wright was in, who had been in 8 of the 9 previous NCAA tournaments, who had made 4 Sweet 16s, and who had just guided his alma mater, Xavier, to a #1 seed in the NCAA tournament. And they could go out and hire that guy, because even that guy said, the Louisville's job is just too good to turn down. I am at my alma mater. I've been in 8 of the past 9 NCAA tournaments, 4 Sweet 16s, just got a 1 seed, just won a conference title. I'm in the same league as Villanova, just won a conference title. And even I got to go because the Louisville job's too good. That was 6 years ago. And 6 years later, Louisville was, I hesitate to use this word because it's a loaded word. It comes off the wrong way, but you'll get my point. Louisville was reduced to hiring a Charleston coach who has never won an NCAA tournament game. It's just the resumes that these people bring to the table are so vastly different. And it speaks to how the Louisville job is viewed in this time, at least in part, relative to how it was viewed just 6 years ago. And whether that's a byproduct of how far Kenny Payne ran this thing into the ground, farther than anybody could have reasonably imagined on the day he took the job, whether it's a byproduct of that, or a byproduct of the uncertainty surrounding the ACC with both Clemson and Florida State looking to leave. And, right now Louisville's in a league with Duke and North Carolina, but who knows if that's going to be true in 3 years. So maybe that plays a role in it. The coaching search, I say this as respectfully as I can. You talk to people in the industry and they think it was perhaps mishandled in a variety of ways. So you throw all that, mix it up. Perhaps that's how you get here. But still, the idea, I guess I just bottom line it this way, and then we'll move on. If you'd have told a single Louisville fan on the day it became crystal clear that you were going to need a new head coach, which was probably like more than a year ago, but whatever, and you told them this is who you're hiring, they would not have been fired up about this. It might work out. Who was Brad Stevens before he became Brad Stevens? But this is not the type of resume or candidate Louisville has typically hired throughout my entire life. Elsewhere on the coaching carousel, hasn't happened yet, but looks like it's headed that way. Andy Enfield reportedly leaving USC, or at least on the verge of leaving USC to be the head coach at SMU. I think that might surprise some people. It actually makes some sense to me. What do you make of it?
Yeah, this is the expected end game here. The story behind the story, because it has been it's basically the reporting on this has been kind of like, he's been targeted. He's expected to be the guy. He actually, as we record this, hasn't accepted an offer. My understanding is there's just haggling over the buyout figure with USC, and then that's supposed to drop on April 1. And so we wait and see if they wait a few days and that actually becomes. But I'm operating under the idea that Andy Enfield, barring a last-minute 11th hour decision. And by the way, we got this with Pat Kelsey at UMass. Like, these coaches do have there is always the capacity. Dana Altman went to Arkansas and then changed his mind, went back home. So we're not going to say it's 100%, but the industry expectation is Enfield will go to SMU. I know you like that move a lot. He's been there 11 years, and there's the tie with like Bronny James, and what does his college future now pertain? Will he stay there no matter if there is a coaching change? If USC does open, what kind of names might you get there? With the expectation Enfield does leave, if he does leave, I've heard everyone from Mark Pope at BYU to Buzz Williams at Texas A&M, to Eric Musselman, but there's a video of Muss that was posted to Twitter early on Thursday of him driving a bus with the AD at Arkansas, so maybe that's nothing. Jerome Tang, Jamie Dixon. You'll see a lot of names get floated out there. SMU is a weird job. There's no getting around it, but there's been so much money put into the program. Remember, it's in the ACC now, so it's like it's isolated, Parrish. You've got Stanford and Cal on the West Coast as AC school starting later this year, and you got everyone else in the ACC, but they're hoping it'll work, and Enfield, could be getting out ahead of the group that might be calling for his job. Because if he had another bad year next year, you could see how he might get fired. And I know you think this is, if Indeed becomes material here soon, it's the right move for him to do.
Yeah, this is just smart business. Like if I were advising him, I would advise him, as long as the numbers make sense, this is probably the smart thing. I can't speak to family situation, how much you enjoy living in Southern California as opposed to Texas. Like that's all stuff they got to figure out. But just in terms of the basketball stuff, job security, you've been somewhere 11 years. That's a long time. You're coming off a disappointing season. You've got a athletic director who's been there less than a year. You're headed to a new conference. Might just be time to reset your career. Take SMU. You get a new league. It's a power conference still, but not, not as difficult as the one you would be coaching in if you stayed at USC. So you get an easier league. I think lower expectations, less immediate pressure, just from a let's see how many contracts I can get and stay employed for as long as I can type deal. From that perspective, this is very sensible.